"500 years before Christianity, certain states in North China built walls to protect themselves from their neighbors. Later, these walls were joined. The Ming used 1 million men to restore and lengthen the Great Wall, 26 feet high, 2,500 miles long. It was called the serpent made of stone. Messengers could ride 5 horses abreast on top of the wall. It was called the longest road in the world. Smoke signals from watchtower to watchtower could send bulletins clear across the kingdom. Whole armies of soldiers and laborers and their families lived their entire lives on and in the wall. When they died, they were buried within the wall. It was called the longest cemetery in the world. Then the wall was breached in 1644, and through the breach poured the Manchus. They forced the defeated Chinese to wear the Manchu pigtail, and they stayed to rule the largest nation on the face of the earth for the next 3 centuries. Their tribal name was Manchu, but they had adopted a dynastic name. Henceforth, the rulers of China would be called Qing. At their coronations, they used the ceremonies, the robes, the protocol established by the Ming. But they insisted on their own forms of entertainment. Jousting on play horses and stilts. The dancing of the bears. When the Qing moved into the Forbidden City, it was war-torn, half destroyed. They restored it to its prime Ming appearance. All buildings were rebuilt according to the ancient blueprints. The new statuary copied the original statuary. But when it came to interior decoration, the Qing had a certain barbarian flair all their own. A Ming dragon would beg for attention. A Qing dragon would scream for it. The Qing took over the ancient Chinese system of civil service examinations. Once every 3 years, 3,000 young scholars from all over the nation came to the great palace of Baohudian, the Hall of Preserving Harmony. For 3 days and nights, they were tested. The tests were so rigid that competitors sometimes went insane, sometimes died of exhaustion. Those who failed sometimes took poison and threw themselves off the high balconies of the Hall of Preserving Harmony. Baohudian is one of the great attractions for all visitors, for all know that in here, the terrible examinations took place. In here as well, the emperor would greet the winners of the tests. The approach of the Son of Heaven would be announced by solemn music. All would prostrate themselves, heads to the ground, in the posture known as the kowtow. The air would be blue with incense. The emperor would appear. All eyes were still averted lest the glorious presence at first impact strike them blind.
In the old days, this is where the scholars came for examinations. A very few were chosen. Now, it is so hard to realize that now
his son goes to college. It is hard for Liu Baoli to realize because even 25 years ago, it was impossible for the son of a factory worker to go to college. Zhijun, his oldest son, is a second-year chemistry student. He is 22 years old, by American standards, old for a sophomore. But for 3 years before coming to Tsinghua University, he was obliged to work with a production brigade on a people's commune in Shenxi province. Every student knows 2 lives. He is a scholar, and he has spent from 2 to 5 of his pre-college years participating in one way or another in the life of the masses. He has worked on a farm, or as a soldier in the People's Liberation Army, or in a factory. Zhijun receives from the state a monthly allowance of 19.5 yuan, or Chinese dollars. His books, his room, his tuition are free. His allowance, which amounts to about $9 American, is spent mainly on food. In China today, $9 a month for food is more than sufficient. He shares his room with 4 other students. In line with the state policy of always maintaining a balance, city, country, and army must constantly mingle. One of his roommates served 3 years before college in the army. 2 served in a factory, and 1, like Zhijun, worked on a farm. The system follows one of the rules of Chairman Mao. The young intellectuals and students of the whole country must be united with the broad masses of workers and peasants and become one with them.
So you must study well and serve the people. Learn from the spirit of the party and the chairman.
In almost 3 centuries of rule, the Qing filled the Forbidden City with enormous quantities of artistic treasure. Chiang Kai-shek, in his flight from the mainland in 1949, paused long enough to take 25,000 crates filled with 4,000 years of Chinese art. But what he left still fills the Forbidden City. The small jade carving is Qing and priceless. Then who can put a price on this jade carving, which is 7 feet high and weighs 5 tons? It took 10 years to unearth it, to transport it to the Forbidden City and carve it into the shape of a mountain. Solid gold, used once in his lifetime by the Qing Emperor, the day he was given his first bath. The Qing Emperor Qianlong built this 5-foot-high temple of gold, rubies, emeralds, and pearls to hold the hair his mother would comb from her head. Even the apparel of a Qing warrior would show the hand of brilliant craftsmanship. What looks from a distance like a fine specimen of the celebrated Peking needlework is actually beads of gold and silver. As the Qing line of emperors grew older, their tastes grew more exotic. It remained for a dowager empress to finally degrade that taste. As often as the grandfather comes here, he finds it hard to believe that he, Liu Mengyu, the farmer, the peasant, is allowed in here, for this is a courtyard once inhabited by Tzu Shi. The grandfather's memory of her is a living memory. Tzu Shi was still alive in 1908 when he was a boy of 12. She started her career as a concubine of the emperor. She was one of 28 Manchu girls selected for the emperor by his mother. Only a Manchu could cohabit with a Manchu emperor. She was called Little Orchid. the first of the Yehonala clan to be selected in 200 years. Women of that clan were supposed to carry a curse. It had been prophesied that a Yehonala woman would bring about the ruin of the Qing dynasty. She was 17 years old when she was made a concubine of the 5th rank. It would be 3 years before she slept with the emperor for the first time. The next morning, she was a concubine of the 3rd rank. 9 months later, she gave the emperor his one and only son. She was made a concubine of the 2nd rank. The emperor died. The 6-year-old son of Little Orchid came to the throne. She was now the Empress Dowager. The emperor gave her a new name, Shi, which means Holy Mother. Now all the treasure accumulated by 17 Ming emperors and 10 Qing was within the grasp of the little concubine from the north. She started as a prodigy in the art of intrigue. She turned into a genius at palace politics. She showed that genius by building a power base on the eunuchs of the court. The eunuchs were her spies, her protectors, her trusted advisors. A eunuch could never betray her because a eunuch could work nowhere but for the court, and a eunuch could never be a threat to the throne. She so dominated her son that he would shiver in her presence. When he sat on his throne, she sat behind him on her throne and told him what to say. When he died at the age of 19 of smallpox and syphilis, so she contrived to put another child on the throne, her nephew. She dominated and tormented him. She had 3 passions: herself, power, and luxury. She adored the Summer Palace, 17 miles northwest of Peking. Here, by the cool summer lake, she built, and rebuilt. Here, she delighted in posing for the new magic box of the 20th century, called a camera. Here, she redecorated in her own inimitable style. It all cost immense amounts of money. They gave her $42 million to build a Chinese navy. She spent it on the Summer Palace. She made one concession to the navy. She built this marble boat. It does not float. It sits solidly on the lake bottom, but it was a lovely place for picnics. It was Cix's habit to sit on this throne in the Palace of Eternal Spring. Across the courtyard of the Chongquan, on the porch of the Hall of Manifest Origins, entertainments were provided. She died peacefully and luxuriously in the Forbidden City at the age of 73. 3 years after her death, the Qing dynasty was overthrown by Sun Yat-sen. A woman of the Ehanala clan had brought the Manchus to ruination. Today, the same entertainments once provided exclusively for Cixi are performed for the people. On great days of celebration, the crowds fill the grounds of Cixi's summer palace. They picnic on her marble boat. There were still 40 years of rebellion, war, and revolution between Cixi and the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949. These are now the owners of the palaces of China. National Day in October is actually a 3-day celebration of the anniversary of the People's Republic. We spent one day in the Forbidden City with the Liu family. One Sunday and 5 centuries. What you have seen and heard is precisely what we saw and heard.